Welcome to Season 2 of HIPE Stories, the show about high-impact Pinoy entrepreneurs, the entrepreneurs who dream big, scale up, and pay it forward here in the Philippines. I'm Manny Ayala, and on the show today, we'll see how Kimberly Yao and Iacopo Rovere took their skills selling food and booze online to creating CloudEats, the largest cloud restaurant group in Southeast Asia. Welcome to the show, Kimberly and Iacopo.
Happy to be here. Thanks so much for inviting us, Manny.
Okay, so I have a question, right? You guys have worked in the, the entrepreneurial startup scene for several years. But my question for both of you is, did you always want to be entrepreneurs?
Well, I'm Chinese-Filipino. So your standard career path typically looks like, one, either you work for the family business, or two, you become a lawyer, or three, you become a doctor. Unfortunately for my parents, I wanted to do none of that, right? So after university, I always knew that I wanted to build something from scratch. I didn't go to the corporate path, unlike 90% of the people I was studying with. So for me, I was always an entrepreneur at heart. I always knew I wanted to build something from scratch and my own.
And what were those things that you did? Were they always in food? Did they always involve food?
I would say majority of them were in food or hospitality, right? Some failed, some are very successful, some are still alive until today. A bunch of different things, to be honest. Over the last 15 years.
You, Iacopo, did you always want to be an entrepreneur? Or were you going to be the good Italian son who becomes a doctor, a lawyer, or a banker?
No, actually, Italian people are famous to be entrepreneurs. But outside the standard, I come from a family of engineers with very successful corporate careers. So originally, at heart, I wasn't grown up to be an entrepreneur. However, later on, during my business school studies, I kind of developed an interest. And I was very intrigued by the entrepreneurial world, and that's basically when it started off, when the interest span off.
And what was your first entrepreneurial adventure?
Well, I was at the time I was about to graduate, right? And all the graduates, I was thinking like, what am I going to do next? And I did my research, asked some colleagues and batchmates, and I found out about this company called Rocket Internet. At that time, Rocket Internet was the leading European startup incubator, and I thought that would be like a great school for me to get a taste of the entrepreneurial life and learn how to build fast-scaling businesses. And I applied, I graduated on a Friday, and on Monday I was in Rocket working for Foodpanda, one of the most successful companies they had.
In what country or
in
what
Berlin.
city? In Berlin.
I was in Berlin in the headquarters,
Okay, man, that's serious rocket stuff. You're in the heart of this German efficiency at Rocket Internet. Yeah, oh my. So Foodpanda, and then how did you end up in Foodpanda in the Philippines?
Well, we were traveling across the world. I was part of the operations team at the time, and we were supporting different markets. Foodpanda was operating in emerging markets mostly. So I had the chance to travel here and there. I spent most of my time traveling, actually. Hong Kong, Singapore, Philippines, India, where I spent 6 months. And then as I progressed, I had the chance to relocate permanently in the market. I was really interested to go hands-on and own a market. And I had this chance. It was offered to me, and I took it. And 7 years later, here I am, still in the Philippines.
Well, you did a good job. Walking into this building, there was this big display downstairs, and the first thing I saw walking in here was a big Foodpanda advertisement. So good job. Good for you. Now, Kimberly, the last thing you were doing before CloudEats, if I'm not mistaken, was running Boozy.
That's right.
Right? Can you talk a little bit about that? How did that happen? And I think you ended up selling it, right? So maybe just tell us your story quickly about Boozy.
Yeah. So I was in hospitality. So when you're in hospitality, you meet a lot of suppliers, right? And we get access to beverage suppliers. So the big guys, Diageo, Pernod Ricard. And they didn't have an e-commerce channel back then. And, everyone was like, why don't you try to put something together, like a new retail concept, right? So the idea was, could we deliver liquor to homes, offices, wherever it was in an hour, right? And this was surge of Grab. This was like during the Lazada.
Wait, what year did you start that?
This was 2017.
Okay.
Right. So Grab had car, but not
Yeah.
food or express. Right. So it was a very lucrative business.
Yeah.
It's a sticky product. So once you get customers, they come back. Right. And it was a side thing for us at that time. I was still in F&B hospitality. That was my full-time role, and suddenly it just exploded. There was a lot of interest in what we were doing, and we got a large conglomerate to invest in the company back in mid-2018. So after
Yeah.
18 months, we got an investor, and it just scaled up from there.
Okay. And you exited when?
So I'm still on the board,
Okay.
but I don't operate that business anymore. One of my co-founders actually runs that now. That was in 2019. At the beginning of 2019, I had left Boozy and met Iacopo through a random connection, actually.
Yeah, I'll ask you about
Yeah.
that in a second. But I just
Yeah.
wanted to, my observation is you were one of the pioneer female entrepreneurs in tech, right? Who else was there in 2017?
Nobody. It was very lonely,
Yeah,
to be honest.
I can imagine.
Yeah.
I can
Yeah.
imagine. Tell me a little bit about that. Like, who did you go to for advice back then?
Yeah. Well, one of the people who actually introduced us, your first endeavor entrepreneur in the Philippines.
Oh, Nix?
Yes, Nix.
Okay.
Nix was actually the one who introduced us. And Nix back then had an incubator, right? He looked for young, savvy founders who had great ideas but didn't know how to take them into reality or scale them up,
Yeah.
right? So I think Nix was a really big, inspiration for me at that time. Yeah.
Very good. And what did you talk about when he introduced you? What was the context of that introduction?
So I had just left Boozy, right?
Yeah.
I was looking for the next big thing for me, right? I knew
okay.
that F&B was something that I was very passionate about, but how do we put tech or disrupt that very traditional industry, right? So I was trying to wrap my head around it. And then they made the introduction. So, Iacopo and I came together. We were bouncing a few ideas off of each other. And we landed on this cloud restaurant, virtual brand concept.
Yeah.
And I thought it was brilliant because in the past I had built concepts physically, so
Yeah.
brick and mortar, and it was always difficult to scale, right? Like, what if people don't like it anymore and you've built an entire restaurant? What if people change their mind about it or something happens to your restaurant? It's just like a big investment, right? It was not very agile in that sense. So when we discussed this concept, I think it was the future of food.
Okay.
And
So at that point, it's an idea, right? But how did you know this was real? How did you know this had legs? Sometimes, right, we entrepreneurs, we fall in love with an idea,
yeah.
right? And, sometimes we're also blind to the reality of the marketplace. So how do you know this was real?
Well, we didn't until we actually tried. Like most of the things, you
Yeah.
gotta, take a leap of faith and try it out. Kimberly actually launched this by herself at the very beginning, and we had our projections and we had our business modeling planned out and everything, and we were expecting to take about 6 or 8 months to kind of develop this idea into a real product and service, and then kind of like have a reasonable size to do a fundraise, but. That time span was 6 to 8 months. Actually, became days, and like within the first 2 weeks, we already knew that this thing was growing way bigger than we expected.
How did you think about the problem / opportunity when you were kicking ideas around? How did you define the opportunity or the problem, right? However you want to look at it.
Yeah, I think we looked a lot at our past experiences. So in our specific fields, right, in food delivery, in F&B, what were the problems that we had scaling businesses up, and how could tech solve that, right? So for me, particularly, it was building single concept, single menu restaurants that close down after like 18 months or 24 months, and then you have to rebrand it and then do this whole thing again. And margins were just very low. In food service, it's notoriously like low single digits, right? So the question was, how could we make this a very future forward more efficient model so that we could actually make money and at the same time build more brands in a single space, right? So I think that was very attractive for me in terms
And then
of
what were you seeing coming from the delivery part
Yeah.
of the industry?
So I was focused a lot on pricing at the time because of the previous experience with the platform and also efficiency from the logistics standpoint. So the opportunity that we saw here was that because of the structure that we have on how we build these kitchens, we're able to deliver high quality products at a lower price. So meaning bigger value for the customer. So that was one big opportunity we saw versus the traditional restaurant industry. And the second one would have been to make it highly accessible for delivery riders to come and pick up, and therefore increasing their efficiency, allowing them faster pickup times and more drops. And we combined these. We saw these two opportunities, and we combined them together in this idea.
So people talk about passion a lot, right? You know, the popular culture, follow your passion, right? Sometimes they forget about the skill part, but, you know, follow your passion. How important to CloudEats was having this passion for food? Are both of you, well, you consider yourselves foodies?
Yeah, definitely.
Well, I know you're Italian, right? So
Yeah,
tell
it's a
me,
cliche.
tell me about your food passion.
Yeah, I mean, I always had a huge food passion, exploring and different technical aspects of food creation, actually. Yeah, and obviously we had the grandma. Show it.
the nonna.
Yeah.
So do you cook? Are you as good as Nonna?
I'm never as good as Nonna, and my Nonna's recipes are better than any other Nonnas as usual. But I cook. I cook
You
a
once
lot.
in a while make pasta from scratch?
Yes, of
Oh,
course.
fantastic. And tomato sauce from scratch?
Yes.
Oh, very good. You don't buy the pomi in the little carton.
We don't buy pommy.
And you, Kimberly?
For me, the foodie part was not so much eating it,
Yeah.
but what you felt after, right? So for me, it was making people happy through food. That's what, for me, whether it's my family or a special someone or customers, right?
Yeah.
It was like, how can we use food to change their day or to give them, a smile, right? So I think that's really what stuck with me, and that's why I was so interested in this business.
Yeah. So in the journey of an entrepreneur, you go through several inflection points, right? You know, clearly one of them is getting started, right? So you have this idea, you're kicking it around, then, okay, let's actually start. How did you do that, right? When you think about what you need to start a business, the three most crucial things are you need talent, you need capital, and you need people to buy from you, right? Market. So tell me, in that early stage.
Well, the people who would buy from you, I think, was already there. We sell food, right? People eat 3 times a day. Filipinos eat 4 times a day. So that was solved. The capital, we were very fortunate to know a few angel investors who were like our pre-seed investors. So I think they believed in us a lot, and that was something that was also came, a little bit easy at the beginning. The talent for me was the hardest part, right? So at the beginning,
Are you talking about managerial talent or tech talent or both?
both, all. I mean, at that point, you have nothing. There's no. You have a business that doesn't exist yet, right?
Yeah.
So how do you convince people, good people, smart people, to come and join you? So at the beginning, you do everything yourself, right? That's the truth of it. Until you get to a certain point where people can read about you, they know about your purpose, you raise some capital, and then you can afford to actually hire better people. So I think the talent part was more difficult for me, at least at the beginning.
How do you look at that early period of your life?
So, like the first 6 months of the company, I think the only thing we had was customers, actually. Capital, we were very lucky to have some pre-seed investors.
Yeah.
Although it was a high-risk investment for them, so the amount was very limited, and we had very, very little capital, to even pay ourselves and everybody. So that was kind of a struggle, and talent. Yes, you really need to find people who believe in you as a person, as an entrepreneur, and follow the idea with you along. So it also was a struggle.
So where did you go to find people?
Well, at the beginning, I looked to my network, right? So who do I know from previous experiences?
Yeah.
Will they be crazy enough to come join you in this journey? I think it was really trying to sell them what it could be versus what it is today. Because what it is today was nothing, right? So it's like, this could be very different.
What did you sell them?
So for example, so Carlo is our culinary director. I think you met him a couple of times, right? So obviously Carlo has been in the industry for 25 years. So he understands, what works, what doesn't work.
What title do you give Carlo?
Carlo is our culinary director.
Okay.
Yeah. So
not CFO, Chief Food Officer.
it can be that as well. Yeah. So with Carlo, I asked him to come and meet us, and this was during the pandemic, right? Come and meet us in our kitchen, in our office, which was literally beside the kitchen. And he comes and I'm like, what if this guy thinks that this is like a joke, right? Because we're in like a apartment building that we converted into a kitchen with an office and everyone smells like chicken and etc. And I think he understood that what we were doing was different.
Yeah.
It's out of his comfort zone. But at the same time, the potential was huge, right? And obviously during the pandemic, he saw this as, okay, this is the future. People are not going to be able to dine in the same way as before. How can I become a part of that, right?
Yeah.
And I remember Carlos saying to one of the people on his team, he said, remember this place, this office, in 3 years, we're going to be in a fantastic, nice office in BGC. And we talked about that last week. He was like, look, like I thought it was going to be 3 years. It happened in 1.5, right? So...
well, I've been to your office. It is very beautiful.
Oh, thank you. We got lucky with that one.
It was a nice place to end. What challenges did you see back then?
Well, on the talent aspect, what I looked for was hungry Europeans who were, looking for these experiences in startups. And there's no better market, I think, than the Philippines or Southeast Asia to kind of get a good hang of how building a business works. And so we actually recruited fresh grads from Europe who were coming for internships, and they've been instrumental to our success today. And some are still with us.
Yeah.
So that's how we
mostly from what country?
Well, they were coming from Italy and Italian institutions, but they had different nationalities. So we had Brazilian, Spanish, Italian, of course.
Yeah. And so today, I'm assuming you have a United Nations management team.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit.
And how does that work? Why is that a great thing?
I think that if you bring people with different experiences and cultures together, it can only get richer, right? The organization can only develop more because you get different aspects of opinions and different approaches. And I think that's what makes it a great organization.
Okay. So you started, you're plugging along. When did you reach product market fit? In your opinion, when did you know, man, this thing, okay, we just need to add gasoline and it's going to go?
I think that was, I would say, so we started in June 2019, right? Probably by August, I came to that realization.
August already?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
And I had a chat with him and I said, look, this is taking off better than we expected.
Yeah.
When are you joining full time?
Wow.
That was my ultimatum in that sense. It's not a one-man job.
Yeah.
It's not even a two-man job. It takes a lot of work, right? So at that point in time, I was like, this is something beyond just me, and we should really look into it. Then we started fundraising in Q4 of 2019.
This is for
the seed round.
Your seed
Correct.
round. Okay.
Yeah, we closed that round in Feb, and then 3 weeks later, the pandemic hit. So I think the timing was great for us in that sense. That we closed around right before the pandemic.
Let me ask you, I'll ask you about the pandemic in a second, but your investors were who? For seed, were they local? Were they international? They regional? Who were they?
It was local investors or family offices mostly.
Okay, good. So let's talk about the pandemic. So that's kind of in a sense for you guys, right? A lucky break, would you say? As people... stayed at home and stopped going to restaurants? Well,
it's a curveball. There are pros and cons, right? The pros are obviously the customers exploded. The cons are the fundraising environment was uncertain, right? People didn't know what was going to happen. Would they invest? Would they not invest? It was very mixed feedback, right? And it took us a while after that seed to get to the next round because the Philippines was just in a limbo
Yeah. How long did that last? About a year and a half?
More, I think.
Yeah, a year and a half.
A year and a
at
half,
least.
yeah. A year and a half.
And then operationally, with lockdowns and everything, that must have been a little bit challenging, no?
Yeah, it was challenging on the supply side. There's been a blockage of shipments, so the supply chain was interrupted. Even finding manpower, the conventional means of recruitment don't really apply anymore. But we made it work. I mean, we were successful in being able to provide jobs during a moment where the F&B industry was crippled. Yeah. It's just like we had to innovate a bit on how to approach the whole job hunting and recruiting when at that time you couldn't even move from a city to another within Metro Manila if you didn't have a pass and so on and so forth.
You get to an inflection point, right? Typically you'll raise your seed, and then at some point, the numbers really start to go up and up and up. And maybe talk about that part of your journey, which I believe has something to do with new brands and new geographies, right? And then obviously raising capital so that you build out your team. So maybe talk about that period, which is probably the last year or so.
Yeah, I mean, so we've done 3 fundraising rounds, 2 of which happened in the last 12, 14 months. So majority of the capital has been very recent, right? I guess if you look at the inflection point, the pandemic was sort of like a curveball. It was like, what's happening? Is this an actual demand that can be sustained? And we did see that surge of volume in 2020 and 2021. Yeah. And then 2022 for us was things started normalizing for everyone, right? We weren't immune to what was happening macroeconomically. And this year, surprisingly, but also it's a lot of hard work, we saw significant volume increase again. So I think people talk about hockey stick growth, right? I think that's happening for us today and this year, which is great because
how come neither of you have white hair?
I do. I pull them out. Show you later. Yeah. It's happening now, if you ask me, right? Because the pandemic it's an outlier. It's like nobody expected it. So is it natural demand? Is it fake demand? I think now is really the inflection point, and we're prepared. We're prepared for that.
What do you think is driving this increase in demand, this interest in your products and services?
I think now things are kind of back to normal for real. And, we went from a stage where you couldn't go out at all to where all of a sudden, like, you could go out and, people, I think, were...
But arguably that goes against you, right? If you're going out, it means you're eating physically somewhere, right?
Yeah, I think that was the beginning of 2022 for us. Yeah. So we went from an extreme where like the orders were like, so to say, inflated because of the limitations on movement, to a situation where they were deflated because people were just so eager to go out. And now it took like 6 to 9 months for people to kind of go back to normality and have a right balance between how many times they go out and how many times they order food in. Versus what we experienced in the last 18 months.
And part of the product that we sell is food plus convenience, right? That is a bundle in itself. And they're not just buying the food, but they're buying convenient food.
Yes.
So I think that you can't replace.
Right. And to do that, you rely heavily on technology. So maybe you can talk a little bit about this beautiful platform you've created. Alfred, I think, is part of your tech platform. Maybe talk a little bit about that, because I think that's one of the keys to your scaling.
Yeah, sure. When we launched at the beginning, again, we didn't have a lot of capital. We couldn't hire a tech team. We didn't have any software. But soon after fundraising our seed round, like Kimberly was mentioning in early 2020, we realized that, okay, we needed to invest in tech if we wanted to be able to scale this business and especially keep control over it. So we decided to come up with this product, which at the time didn't exist anywhere in the market. So we first looked for a ready, off-the-shelf product that could work for our business model. But given the fact that there were no business models like ours, then there's also no product made for it. So we built it ourselves.
Wait. Time out. So your business model, tell me a little bit more about how it's so different from what else is out there in the world. And then we go back to the tech.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, so we run multi-brand,
Yeah.
multi-cuisine, multi-platform, so multi-hyphenated everything, cloud kitchens, right? So at the base of it, it's a infrastructure play, and then we add the brands and the technology into that. So it's really like a threefold
Yeah.
business model. So there's infrastructure, which are the cloud kitchens.
Yep.
There's brands, which we build them from scratch, or they're virtual or digital first brands, and also the technology, which ties in the infrastructure and the brands together.
And do those like plug into something like an ERP system as well, and it rolls into your financials, or not yet?
Yes.
So Alfred is the one that ties that together,
President,
basically.
yeah, correct. And so this is where tech comes into play. Even the platforms were not ready for these kind of concepts. So it was very difficult for us to manage this large inventory that we had in terms of brands. And then also operationally, it was very hard for us to understand in the kitchens, how could we improve the efficiency? How we have so many different verticals. Our kitchens don't just do like pizza or burgers. They go from anything like salads to desserts to Mediterranean food. So there's a lot of efficiency plays that we were missing out on because of this lack of transparency. So we built this tech software that allowed us to do two basic things. One is manage the entire content in a very, very efficient way. So we can work with our menu inventory, meaning the dishes, the prices, the images, on all platforms through one unique solution very, very efficiently. The second aspect that it was helping us solve was the operational efficiency. So how to improve how many dishes we do and how quickly we cook them in each kitchen. And we're now able to track the cooking time of every single dish, every single order that comes out throughout the day, and see what are the bottlenecks in the chain and what can we do to improve and become better.
So talking about growth, right? Looking at the next 3 years, what do you think are going to be the key drivers of your growth?
I think at the end of the day, you go back to customers, right? Did they like the food? Will they buy again? Will they try something new?
Yeah.
So tapping into that is going to be very crucial. And then obviously other growth levers would be opening a new market. So we're in Vietnam and Philippines today. Will the business work in Thailand? Will the business work in Malaysia? How about Singapore? Do the economics work there? So I think market launches is one. The other thing obviously is within each market, we can open more cloud kitchens to reach a bigger audience. So right now we're in Luzon, so Greater Luzon. How do we get to customers in Visayas? How do we get to customers in Mindanao, right? And then going back to that customer bit, when we build the brands, do they have high retention? Are they going to come back and buy this burger, once every 2 weeks, right? So those are the metrics that we look at to really understand if, it's going to be successful or not.
How's it going in Vietnam? Is it following the same story as the Philippines?
Yeah, so Vietnam's unique, I think. There are unique challenges that we didn't experience in Philippines and vice versa. We entered the market without physically being there because of the pandemic restrictions. So we had to launch remotely.
Wow.
So what that meant is we never met the team that launched the market. So we hired all of them on Zoom.
That's crazy.
We never met
right?
them in person prior to launching, right? We sent them a bunch of funds and we had a plan and we just said execute, right? And in hindsight, maybe that could have been done in a different way, but that was what we had at the time. And we wanted to go fast. We wanted to go right after the lockdown in Vietnam opened so that we can capture all of that, all of the demand that was there, right? What happened was we launched in December of 2021. And by March of 2022, the travel opened up. So we had the team from there come to the Philippines.
Yeah.
And then when they showed up and, did the whole immersion with the team here, they were like, oh, so this is how it's done, right? Because, so we're a heavy operational business, right? We have a lot of operational core. It's not like we have a software that we're rolling out, in different parts of the world. So I think looking at that, the challenge was the remote launch, sorry.
Yeah.
And again, in hindsight, it's not something that we would like to do again when we launch the next market, which is probably Thailand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How does that look, Thailand? What's the early assessment of that market?
Well, the market is very big,
Yeah.
right? In terms of their GMV for food delivery, it's the last time I checked, it was bigger than Philippines. So huge opportunity there. Lots of learnings from Vietnam. We'd like to apply that to when we go into Thailand. So hopefully things get, are easier for us and also grow faster because we made a lot of mistakes. I think that's something that, as startup founders, we have to think about, right? The mistakes cost you time. They cost you money. How can you not repeat them again when you do the same thing in another market?
Yeah. There's this saying, right? What got you here won't get you there, right?
Yeah.
So you've had a playbook, but it's gotten you this, this kind of success. When you start thinking about all these new countries, right, and the operational complexities, what are the things you think about in order to make this growth more manageable?
For the other countries?
Yeah.
I think it's, again, talent, right? Because we don't live there. We're not locals. And food is a very, I think, a highly localized product, right? Taste here is different from taste there. So who can we rely on in these markets to take the business forward? How can we develop the team quickly is something that's very important as we go into the other markets. Yeah. Aside from talent, really understanding of the market. They have their own nuances. Like you think Philippines is the same as Vietnam because the economics are the same, but not really. There's things that you need to adjust and work with that are different for each market.
And what about in terms of food tastes, both literally and metaphorically?
That's been very pronounced, actually, especially in Vietnam. It's a totally different palate, I think. Filipinos like salty food, we like fried, we like American and very Western food. And there it's the complete opposite. They don't like salt a lot, more healthy, mild flavors. So we'd had to adjust in that sense. But I mean, food is food, right? As long as you understand what people are eating, then we can make that product.
So no burger beast in Vietnam?
Not yet. We think that the market is still a lot local, very local cuisine, but we'll get there, right? I think obviously in every market, people will eat burgers. It's just what does a burger taste like? I'll give you an example. Jollibee has a different recipe for Vietnam.
In Vietnam, really?
Their chicken joy.
Less salty?
I'm not privy to the specifics, but it's a different recipe, and they've had to change that over the years because they realized Vietnamese people don't like the same chicken joy. Yeah.
But what's emerging as popular categories in Vietnam?
I think healthy. So anything with vegetables, they love their fresh produce there. And the good thing is they have access to high quality fresh produce versus here, right? There it's like a very agricultural country. The supply chain is quite developed, so they get fresh stuff right away. For us, it travels from Baguio in an open air truck for like 6 hours, right? By the time it gets here, it has a shelf life of 2 days. So for there, it's healthy food is quite good.
Do you have the equivalent of a Carlo in Vietnam?
Not yet. I guess for us also here, Carlo joined us about maybe almost a year in. So that time would be sometime now for Vietnam. We've been looking, but it's challenging.
So 5 years from now, where can I expect to go and have a CloudEats meal?
Anywhere, even offline. So one of the one of the growth levers that I think we didn't mention before is the offline channel. So we're now ventured into taking the most successful brands we have and opening them as physical outlets. So we're taking basically from online to offline. Reverse compared to the traditional restaurant industry where you first start offline.
So how many are you planning?
Well, we launched one a couple of weeks ago, and it was incredibly successful.
Where's that?
In Uptown.
I'll take the office and we'll go and visit.
They've been there.
They didn't invite me. I'm looking at my team. Why didn't you invite me?
They were all there on our
Was that
opening day.
for
Burger Beast?
Burger Beast.
Yes.
Uptown Long.
I saw the pictures. That's right. I remember now.
And so that's proven very successful. Actually, what was very interesting was to see the effect on the online orders of the opening of an offline stall, which was pretty high, and we didn't expect it to have this consequence. So we're now looking into how to launch another 2 or 3 brands.
It actually boosts online sales?
Yeah, it boosts awareness.
people
Yeah.
are posting and all that stuff, right?
Yeah, there's a media value to it that impacted our sales, and so we're piloting this in different ways for another couple of brands now. So we want to launch a couple of physical stores for other brands.
So at some point, this idea of the cloud actually becomes incidental, right? You are a restaurant group, and you'll serve people through a variety of means
Correct.
and methods.
You
right?
omnichannel, omni-channel,
Right.
basically.
The beauty of the cloud is that it gives us a certain agility on how we can keep on creating and innovating in the recipes and the brands that we build versus the offline or traditional way, because that would require capex, a lot of time to set things up. But being on the cloud, this is really the true power that we exploit, is the ability to keep on creating, adding dishes, adding brands, and then taking off the ones that are not working.
And I think one of the things you were wrestling with was, should you actually allow other brands that are not yours to use this platform? How do you, where are you on that point at the moment?
We're still here. No, we've been thinking about that because...
remember, I think I texted you, right? There's a friend of mine, he's super keen about this one pizza concept. He said, hey, can you ask Kimberly and Iacopo, right? Can we work on something together?
Yeah, we've been approached by, food entrepreneurs or big chains as well. I think for us, controlling the inputs is essential. Understanding, how do we make sure that we're in a hyper-efficient situation? And if you bring in third parties, then that efficiency drops because they have their own recipe, they have their own way of doing things. They would like this packaging, they would like this specific tomato, things like that, right? So because they have different standards of input, it's difficult for us to control. I'm not saying that we won't ever venture into that. I think that's entirely, sub-model in itself. But for now, we're quite focused on what we're doing.
Yeah, there's a lot of synergies that go into play on how we build these brands. It's not just like several independent brands. There's a lot of synergies when it comes down to ingredients, packaging, operations, and cooking. So adding like external brands could hamper the existing chain. Plus, at the heart of CloudEats, we're creators. We're obviously operators because we're required to, but at the heart, we're really creators, and therefore we don't want to take that aspect of our life out of what we do.
Is there a geographic limit to your ambitions?
I guess because we sell food, then it will be no. Anywhere, anyone can be a customer, right? I think limitation in that sense would be where the economics would make sense. So, for example, Singapore or Hong Kong would have very different rent, labor costs, right? So I think that would be where the limitation arises.
Well, we're very excited about how the next few years roll out for you.
Us as well.
Hopefully, I get invited by my team the next time they go out to a physical store, because I've had the online delivery ones many times.
If you like the online burger, you'll like the offline better.
Okay, awesome. Awesome. Okay, so I think we'll get to kind of the last thing we want to chat about, which is this whole idea of paying it forward, because that's really at the heart of the Endeavor network, right? That's the ethos. It's paying it forward. And our theory of change, to use nonprofit language, is when you have entrepreneurs who pay it forward, when you have really skilled entrepreneurs who pay it forward, that's the way an entire ecosystem grows, right? Because you have entrepreneurs who reach a certain level of success and they start investing in others. They start mentoring others. They start sharing their network with others. And in many cases, they also become the training ground for new entrepreneurs. So what's an example? There's a company, an Endeavor company in Colombia called Rappi, right? Which, it's a food delivery. And by our last count, there have been over 100 entrepreneurs that trained at Rappi and then went out and started their own business. Same thing is true for Careem, right? Which is the Uber of the Middle East. That has also spawned about 100. So I just wanted to have a conversation about how you guys see this whole idea, right, of multiplication, right? How do you create a multiplier effect in our country?
Our startup ecosystem is still quite young, right? Which is great. because small things that you do have a big impact compared to if it's like a bigger situation already. I guess for me, our fundraising and startup journey hasn't been easy, right? It's been challenging. And I know a lot of things now that I wish I knew before, right? When we were starting out. So in my mind, paying it forward is helping other entrepreneurs know more, be supported better at the beginning so that they avoid the mistakes that we made, right?
Yeah.
And hopefully that helps them in their journey as well. So I guess in the last 6 to 8 months, we've been advising startups, younger startups, earlier stage. For myself, particularly female founders who've been looking to me for advice, and I think that's a way of giving back, of paying it forward, because we didn't get here by ourselves. Like, we had a whole village help us, and we want to be that village for them. We want to be that support for them. Yeah.
In our little, we both contributed, similar to the Rappi stories that you were sharing, right? With people kind of training on what we're working on and then moving on to their endeavors. So before in Food Panda, we had a few people who ventured off and became incredibly successful in launching new businesses. Businesses that then later on from Europe expanded back to the Philippines, where everything originated, and even in CloudEats, we had a couple of people who joined us, stayed with us for a while, and then they ventured off as country managers of new startups here in the country.
So we're already seeing it in 3.5 years, right? Like when someone tells me, "Hey, look, I'm thinking of leaving," I always ask them why, right? And if they tell me, "Oh, I want to start my own business or be a GM of this," I'm like, "Go," right? So I won't even try to stop you, because I think that this was the stepping stone for them to have something of their own.
That's a very healthy way to look at it. That's really good. I have a similar viewpoint, which is I never get in the way of somebody's potential and somebody's happiness, right? And then that's, I guess, my own personal mission statement is about unleashing potential in others. But anyway, so I'm so glad to hear, right, that you're already in there and multiplying yourselves, right? You realize that the end point for many entrepreneurs in Endeavor is they end up sitting on the boards of Endeavor in various countries. And so that's my dream, right? This one day I'm going to have more Endeavor entrepreneurs sitting on the board, right? Alongside, the taipans of the Philippine business community. So I think we're sort of at the end of our time. Thank you so much for coming and sharing 45 minutes with us. I know you're extremely busy, and coming from the long weekend, you're already behind and it's day one. That was Kimberly Yao and Iacopo Rovere, the founders of CloudEats, the leading cloud restaurant group in Southeast Asia. Thank you for listening to Hype Stories. To stay connected with us, you can reach us via email at hello@endeavor.org.ph and follow us on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram. This episode was produced by Endeavor Philippines, a global community of, by, and for high-impact entrepreneurs. And a special thanks today to Podcast Network Asia Studios, where we are taping this episode. And thanks as well to our executive producer at Endeavor, Chelsea Sullivan, and our associate producer, Anya Abrugar. Thank you. I'm Manny Ayala, and you've been listening to Hype Stories. Grazie.